Thank you, Kay, very much. Well, hello. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. I love seeing this big group. Has anybody else heard me talk before in the room? I know there's a few I recognize. Okay. Jennifer Ann Barker. I have a vaccine injured child that was injured in 2010. Can you turn it up? You need me to get this right here. My child was injured back in 2010 by a vaccine. And I started researching vaccines and realized that there were some horrific ingredients. And when I found out that there were aborted fetal cells used to harvest viruses on to create many of the vaccines on the childhood schedule, I knew I had to start educating parents. So in 2016, I agreed to help bring a documentary here into St. Louis called Back St. Louis. I highly suggest watching that documentary if you've never seen it before. There's actually two now. There's Vax and Vax 2. And I realized that there are a lot of people that did not know these ingredients, but specifically that aborted fetal cells, canine kidney cells, insect cells are used to harvest vaccines. But that there's neurotoxins like aluminum, ethyl mercury, polysorbate 80, a lot of things that are toxic to the body. And so that's when our group birthed in 2016, and I started going to the Capitol. And I don't really know what year I met Lisa and Stacy, but I've known them for many years now, and just proud of them and happy to talk alongside them. So our group, Informed Health Choice Missouri, we focus on vaccinations and informed consent. We want to make sure that everybody understands the risks, the benefits, and alternatives to any medical procedure, and that you have the choice. You are not, no one can force you to put something in your body that you don't want to do. But when I realized back in 2023 that Missouri Right to Life, mainly, and these other abortion pro-life groups were not actually promoting the abolition of abortion, I knew I had to get involved with that. And so all of our board members, we are staunchly pro-life. And so I said, you know, guys, I think we're going to have to jump into this fight, because if you know Senator Moon, raise your hand if you know Senator Mike Moon. Senator Mike Moon is the most pro-life legislator that I've ever met at the Capitol. I don't know anyone that fights harder than him. And he's just has a genuine heart. And he was trying to get personhood passed and having a heck of a time. And I thought, well, let's come alongside and see if we can help get personhood passed. Personhood just would establish that any person in the womb after conception is a person and should be protected as such, that they should have equal protections. And I believe that with all of my heart. And so I noticed that there were a lot of Republicans that didn't want personhood. They weren't getting behind him and helping him. In fact, we have leadership there that fought actively against personhood. It doesn't make any sense to me. So that's why here I am, Jennifer with Informed Health Choice Missouri, jumping into this fight. So 2024, Amendment 3 comes onto the scene. Horrific what is put into our Constitution. It upsets me tremendously. I do think that we need to protect our Constitution with everything we have. I think it should be extremely hard to change it. I don't think that this Amendment 4, if you want to talk about that, I can later on. I don't believe that it does what I truly think is the fix to protecting our Constitution. But I've handed out Amendment 3 to you. That's HJR 73, so you should have that in front of you. I also have Amendment 4 in the back if you want it. I have lots of handouts back there. I even have the old Amendment 3 and lots of handouts. But let's talk about Amendment 3. So this old Amendment 3 comes onto the scene, Amendment 3, 2024, puts abortion into our Constitution up to 9 months. And I was helping.
True. That is not true. It is not true, not up to 9 months. Please speak the truth.
Okay, please refrain from any comments. There will be a time for question and answer. We don't want any outbursts or disruptions.
But you were speaking earlier about God, please show us the truth. Please speak the truth. That's not true.
Okay, well,
not true.
Later
okay, you can have the back and forth, but right now we're going to let her present, okay?
So personhood is going through the Senate, and I'm helping Senator Moon try and get this committee hearing. We did a committee hearing. Every single Republican on that committee voted for personhood to go out of committee. But then it wasn't allowed to go to the full Senate floor for a vote. Leadership held it back. They didn't want a full vote on personhood. So, okay, we try next year. So then all of 2025, we're trying super hard to get personhood passed. We get it through committee. Every Republican on that committee voted for it. So that tells me most likely every Republican on the floor would vote for it and pass it. But leadership didn't want it. We have gatekeepers in the Missouri legislature. You have the Senate Pro Tem and the Speaker of the House, and if they don't want something to go to the floor, or they don't want something to go to committee, they have their ways to make sure they have an inside game that they play. And so I watched that inside game, and it was really interesting to watch who voted, who came and testified for this new amendment 3, HJR 73. A lot of those people did not testify or support personhood. I even watched Susan Klein testify against personhood, and Sam Lee testify against personhood several years prior. So that was really interesting to me because I just don't understand why you wouldn't want to say every child should deserve to be protected as a born child should be protected. So this HJR 73 is very concerning to me, and that's why I wanted to hand it out to you, because I believe everybody should have the legislation in front of them and be able to read the legislation. And so I made notes on this, and feel free to make your own notes, and let me know if you have questions or concerns later on. I am not a specialist at reading legislation, but this is the things that I've learned in the 10 years, a lot of this from Stacy and Lisa. But the thing that's most concerning is in the title, this is the title, reproductive health care. I don't think that abortion or transgender surgeries is health care. I disagree with that highly. So I think right there off the bat we have an issue. And it doesn't ban abortion. And honestly, we've never had a ban on abortion in the state of Missouri. We've always had pills coming in over our borders from out of state, out of country. Women can take abortion pills and abort right in their home. Close to 70% of abortions are done at home. In fact, there's a trend. We're trending to do more of that and less of the clinics. And also you can go over state lines. You can go to Illinois, Kansas, or states that have, we've always had that. So, and I'll mention real quickly, that's part of the reason that I'm in this fight, because at 19 years old, I had an abortion myself. I went to Illinois to do that. And I repent of that, and I know that I have a God that forgives me and has removed that sin from me as far as He can. And I wouldn't want anyone to go through the horror that I went through. It's not just physical horror, it's mental. It really messes with your mind. And so for many years, I had trouble with that until I really realized that Jesus Christ is my Savior, and that I can release that sin, and He washes me as white as snow. And so I'm very thankful to be able, and I told Him I would do everything in my power to protect babies in the womb. So if you look at this on page 1, it says we're looking at section 36.1, abortion, it says regulating. So the way that this is worded, we're not restricting it, we will be regulating it if this amendment passes. And I'm not sure, and I'm going to talk about it on page 2, where I think that we're going to have issues if they try to bring things in afterwards. I think we're going to have issues because it'll be considered by the courts that you're restricting abortion rather than regulating it. So it says here on line 6, an abortion may be performed or induced upon a woman in cases of medical, emergency, fetal anomaly, rape, or incest. So voting for this as a Christian, you would be voting for abortion. And I've had a lot of people argue with me, we already have abortion in our Constitution, so we need to vote for this. I just warn you as a Christian, I do not believe that God has ever asked us to do an evil to overcome an evil, and I believe that this amendment is as evil, if not worse, than the original Amendment 3, and I'll explain that as we go along. And please cut me off if I'm running short on time, Tim. I don't even know how much time I had. So then, in the next sentence, it says, in the case of an abortion performed or induced in cases of rape or incest, so let's take a look there. They're taking out rape or incest and leaving out fetal anomaly and medical emergency. The abortion may be performed or induced no later than 12 weeks gestational age of the unborn child. So it's not what they're saying in this legislation, it's what they're not saying. They're saying that there's a 12-week limit for rape or incest, but there is no age limit for fetal anomalies or medical emergencies. And when we get into this further, you'll see the loose definitions for those. The next thing is there's no police report required. There's something else that's left out of here. Originally it was in there, but they pulled the police report out. So any woman could state that she was raped in order to have an abortion. And there's no autopsy for fetal anomalies. Or the medical emergencies. There's no proof or accountability for that. So then we go to page 2. This is what I was talking about. The General Assembly may enact laws. May means it's not required. So they may not. They've told me we're going to put the police report in statute later on. But according to this sentence, I don't believe that they'd be able to, because it says the General Assembly may enact laws that regulate the provision of abortion. So they will not be able to restrict abortion, they'll be able to regulate it. At least that's how I decipher this. And then these laws shall include, and then whenever we're reading legislation, a may is possibly, a shall is a must. You must do this. So I wish that it did say that they must restrict abortion. Then you go down to line 21, it says, no abortion shall be performed or induced upon a woman based on the prenatal diagnosis, test, or screening indicating a disability in an unborn child, except in cases of fetal anomaly. So that whole sentence is not worth anything because the word except just strikes it out for fetal anomalies. And then it says, no public funds shall be expended on the purpose of performing or inducing or otherwise assisting in abortion, except in cases of medical emergency, rape, or incest, or otherwise authorized by law. So that's another huge loophole. So when it says no funds shall be expended, except your taxpayer dollars will fund those abortions for rape, incest, and medical emergencies. Not for fetal anomalies, but for the other 3. Okay, now down to line 35. It says, licensed medical physicians shall be required to provide women with medically accurate information. The General Assembly may enact laws to provide the right for a minor to consent to an abortion or granted by a court order. There's another loophole allowing minors to consent without parents. And who defines who that accurate information is, the medically accurate information? Fetal organ harvesting, we already have a ban in the state and federal. I put down the state code and the federal code. That's ballot candy, just to lure you into vote for this legislation. And then we have another broad loophole here. I'm just going to kind of breeze through, so I don't want to take too much time. This, for transgender surgeries, we already have the SAFE Act that passed. Senator Moon helped with the SAFE Act to get that passed to protect children from transgender surgeries. That piece of legislation, which I have a copy if anybody wants to see that, I think it's 24 pages long. There's one paragraph on one page that's going to sunset. A sunset is when they put something in law, but they say this portion or the whole law will not exist after the sunset date. So in August of 2027, there is a portion of that legislation that sunsets. It's the portion on the transgender hormone drugs. And so in the state of Missouri currently, it is illegal to perform transgender surgeries. If it's happening, you need to let somebody know that you know that this is happening. But the drugs that will sunset, all they have to do, which they did this year, run legislation to remove that sunset, but I didn't see anybody pushing for that. So if they truly wanted to protect children, why in the heck were they not pushing to remove that sunset on that legislation we already have? I've heard the argument that we need it in our Constitution. It's stronger than having it in law and statute. I disagree. I don't think that's what our Constitution is for. I believe our Constitution is to keep a government in check. It's not for marijuana and abortion and transgender. That stuff belongs in statute. But that's a whole other thing we can talk about. Makes me upset what they do to our Constitution. Misuse it. Okay, so then on page 3, I'm going to breeze through some of this again. So on line 48, any state law relating to reproductive health care shall be brought. So any challenge the validity of any state law regarding any reproductive health care shall go through the Circuit Court of Cole County. So that's one judge. That's a concentration of power, which I have a big problem with too. I don't think that we should ever be concentrating power, and this legislation would concentrate that power into that one court system. And let's see, what else? On 55, the General Assembly shall have the authority to enact laws to carry out the provision of this section. So it can regulate, but it can't end abortion. This does not ban abortion, which I have heard people say this will do. It will not. And then I want to go through the definitions, because I think those are really important. What a fetal anomaly? A structural or functional abnormality in the unborn child's gestational development that would make life outside the womb impossible. Doctors are often wrong. And when I did get pregnant with my daughter, I was 38 years old by that time. And they wanted me to have monthly ultrasounds. And so I was going in and getting checked regularly. And they told me she had these cystic fibromas. She had these cysts on the sides of each side of her neck. And she also had a thickened nuchal translucency on the back of her neck. And they thought she probably was going to have Down syndrome or Turner syndrome. And they wanted me to have amniocentesis. There was some risk with that, so I said no to that. And they wanted me to meet with a counselor, and this is my first baby. I didn't really understand my first full pregnancy. I really didn't understand what they meant by that. Well, the counselor wanted to tell me that there was the option to abort. She didn't say abort, but there is the option to terminate the pregnancy because it is difficult raising children that have disabilities. My husband and I looked at each other and said, absolutely not. There's no way. We are keeping this child, and we left the office. And we went to have the next ultrasound done, and of course, my pastor anointed me with oil, prayed over me, prayed for her. We go to the next ultrasound, and the sonographer, she's running over my stomach back and forth, and I'm thinking something's wrong because she keeps going back and forth, and I'm giving her a worried look, and she says, don't be worried, I just can't find those cystic fibromas. I get goosebumps every time I tell this, because God, they told me they would not be able to remove those until she was born. They'd surgically remove them, but God healed her. And then when she was born, there's no chromosomal disorder. That child has every chromosome she's supposed to have and no extra. And that is praise to the Lord that He healed her. I believe that any child can be healed, even coming out the birth canal, if God wants to heal that baby, He will. So for a doctor to say we have to abort this baby beforehand is it's just insane to me. There's just no reason that any child should be considered that they need to kill that child in the womb. And I think that most ethical doctors are going to try their hardest to save the baby and the mother. So talking about medical emergencies, I think that's pretty silly. Then on page 4, we have where they say reasonable medical judgment. A medical judgment that would be made by a reasonably prudent physician, knowledgeable about the case and the treatment possibilities with respect to the medical conditions involved. This is very dangerous language to me. I fought very hard during COVID. I met a lot of crazy doctors. I met a lot of good doctors. But there were a lot of doctors that did not have reasonable medical judgment. There were a lot of medical professionals that didn't have reasonable medical judgment. So that, I think, is very loosely defined. So these loosely defined definitions are very concerning to me. And then on the last page, that's what you're going to see on your ballot. The part that I highlighted at the bottom, that's all you're going to see. You're not going to see this 5 pages. And if you read through these, the most interesting thing that pops out to me is there's no mention of protecting the preborn. In every line there, it talks about the woman. It doesn't talk about the preborn baby. So to me, this is very dangerous. It puts into our Constitution that there are certain classes of people that are not worthy of life. Currently, our Constitution does have that every baby is not worthy of life. If they want to terminate the child, they can. But this even narrows it down more. And I think that that's really a dangerous slippery slope, because there are citizens in
that we know that there are people in charge, the big guys, in charge of the world here, that do not want certain classes of people on this earth. And I think that that's a slippery slope that we're on. So I also just quickly wanted to mention Amendment 4, because Amendment 4 is what they call the IP reform. I don't think that this is the right way to go about it, and I'll talk to you later on. I don't want to take too much time, but I feel that this Amendment 4, and Stacy and I have talked about this, will lock in abortion into our Constitution. If Amendment 4 passes, the people will never be able to get all eight congressional districts. We will never get person. Say people wanted to try and get it because our legislature can't do it. They don't want to do it. We would never be able to do it. We would never be able to get Kansas City and St. Louis. So I think this is very dangerous, because whether we have the old Amendment 3 or the new Amendment 3, Amendment 4 is going to lock whatever's in that Constitution in their legislature, unless they have a change of heart. But I sure haven't seen that. And then, let's see, what else? I also wanted to touch on the fact that your churches, a lot of them don't know what they can talk about at the pulpit. Your church should not be scared to talk about Amendment 3. They do have the right to do that as a nonprofit, as a 501c3, and I have information on that from a legal team so that you can share that with your pastor. I also developed a pastor's toolkit to help pastors talk to their congregation about Old Amendment 3, New Amendment 3, and all of these things. But I truly believe that God wants to protect every child. He knits every single child in the womb for a purpose, and we should not be the one determining which children are worthy and which are not. So, thank you so much for listening. I'm so happy to answer questions afterwards. And there is so much more to this. So, if you want to have a conversation further than what I did here, I have business cards back there too. You're always welcome to email or reach out.
Thank you, Jennifer. And we will open it up then after a while for some Q&A or some back and forth, if you have questions about some of the terminology in the legislation, or, the way it is presented. Obviously, we are a room full of people, and we will have differing opinions on different things. And I think that we are all able to have constructive conversations around the disagreements that we may or may not have. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll go on to the next part of the presentation, and then allow for those questions and answers to be done later.
Hi guys, my name is Stacy Shore. This is Lisa Pannett. I'll let her introduce herself in a second. We do not have an organization. We are two women that have been involved in grassroots fights for the last, Common Core was my first big one. And so we traveled across Missouri. We actually were here all those years ago, and trying to educate parents what was happening in public education. Not only were we right, it was way worse than we thought it was going to be, and that's where we've seen public education devolve to where it's at. It's so sad, because not only does it puts a target on our country. Kids aren't proud to be American anymore. That's because they're learning that in school, right? We could see that coming. They're putting wedges in math between parents and their kids. When 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4, and it's about an accepted process and not the correct answer, we have real problems in America, okay? So I sell real estate for a living, have for 30 years. I don't get paid to do this. No lobbyist is paying me money. No politician is paying me money. We feel called to do this. So in coming to you today, I have a degree in political science and public administration. I've always had an interest in politics, reading policy, understanding policy, and it's a blessing and a curse. But why we're here tonight mostly is Amendment 5. We're going to go over the legislation with you. My county was the first county in the state of Missouri that put in place a pretty aggressive ordinance that put massive restrictions on data centers. They did it swiftly. I was on a committee. I was a part of writing the ordinance. I can talk about that at the end if you have questions. But we did that pretty quickly, and I'm really proud of that work. So that's kind of part of what we'll talk about. But we're going to talk about Amendment 5, but I want Lisa. And we have a podcast called Shield Maidens of Missouri. Don't know if you've ever heard of it. My daughter is a 20-something. She's like, nobody's ever going to listen to that. You guys, like, you sound like we're on a phone call. Like, nobody's ever going to listen, Mom. I said, I don't care. I don't care. I mean, I don't care. God knows she's going to listen. I don't care. But we have been honored to be on 93.3 Real Talk in St. Louis. We have a podcast in the last 76 days. We only do it one time a week. We get tired, okay? So we're menopausal, we get tired. One time a week's all you get, okay? And our technology isn't great all the time. It's staticky, but the message is good. We want you to do your own research.
And the cat.
Well, I have a cat that sometimes interrupts, and I just don't even try to cut it out anymore. I don't care. But anyway, we are so honored to be here tonight. I'm going to at least introduce herself, and then we're going to get into Amendment 5 and what the legislation actually says.
Well, I don't want to take too much time. I'm Lisa Pannett. I'm the other half of Shield Maidens. I also do armor line during the session where I testify on your behalf because we have all the lobbyists there at the Capitol and there's nobody there really representing you. So that's what I'm there to do each and every hearing. I see Chris over there and she knows that I'm always there, you know, maybe the lone voice against who knows how many lobbyists at any time. So that's really what I do, but God called me to this, and I'm just honored that He's brought us together to do it together. And homeschooling mom, you know,
Very, when she's testifying in the House or Senate, well, early, and they're like, now who are you with? And she's like, I'm with Armorvine. And what do you do? Like, who do you work for? And she's like, I work for freedom and liberty for the people. And the state reps would cock their heads, and the senators are like, what? I work for freedom and liberty. That's what I'm here for. And they would just look at her like, what? What is that? That's why we're here tonight. Because I mean, I watch these hearings. I do not go into the Capitol every day. I have a real job, but I listen all the time. So I got my headsets on and I'm working, but I listen and just being engaged. Thank you for everybody here tonight. So encouraging. We've seen this all across Missouri. People just like you are coming. They want to learn. They want to understand. So what we're here to do is not to tell you how to vote. We're going to educate you, and then you guys do your own research. The yellow pad that's going around will email you all the stuff you're going to see, because in the back of the room, I'm sorry, technology isn't always a friend. We couldn't get it to work on this thing, the video. But we're going to
handouts. And the handouts, we only had so many, so we ran out. So when you look at the legislation, it's HJR 173 and 174, and so some of you don't all have that one. Sorry, some of you don't have that, so I'm sorry. But if you put your name on that yellow pad, you can get it.
So we're going to talk about Amendment 5. You're going to hear them say it's the elimination and quote phase out. Pay attention to the word phase out. What does that mean? Does it phase out in a year or 2 years or 5 years or 10? We're going to talk about that. Maybe 30, maybe never. But we're going to go over the legislation because you deserve the truth. The first question is trust. What they're really doing is asking, and I say they, the House and the Senate, the legislature, they're asking for you to trust them. We're going to get into that a little bit later and show you in legislation what that means. But I'm going to show you a video. I'm going to let Lisa intro it because she was actually there. And I want her to explain to you what happens in the Missouri Senate. So Lisa?
So what you're going to see with this video is right now we're one of 2 states that do not show the Senate video. That means you and I cannot see it. You're going to work, and after work maybe you want to watch a recording of the Senate. You can't, because we're one of 2 states that do not have that. Now the House does. The House side has those recordings, but not the Senate. So what they're doing here is this is a vote to say, can all of us see what the Senate is doing and how they are voting? And cue the video. You'll see what they do.
So I got to tell you a little bit more about it. Y'all love it. What it is, so she was sitting there watching, and I'm listening, okay? And they have brought up a rule change to allow for video to take place in the hearings and on the Senate floor. Because you know when they vote, like they perfect something, which means it closes the door, no more amendments can be added. Well, we can't see who's even in there listening to the debate. And then when they yay-nay it, do you guys know what yay-nay means? In the Missouri Senate, what is so insane to me in this day and age of technology, when they bring in a bill and they perfect it, okay, everybody for it?
Yay.
Everybody against it?
Yay.
What? Why am I not seeing a vote? But not only can I not see their lips move because we don't have video, I can't see anything because it's all audio. 2 states in the United States of America, only 2, don't provide video for the people of their state. Us in North Carolina. The way we got this video, want to talk about that?
So that was Act for Missouri. So they're this great organization that has really come on the scene, and once again, they're kind of educating the people on what's taking place at the Capitol. And they sunshine to see, we want to see that video because what's going to take place is not a video on the record to see, so you could all see, oh, who voted yes and who voted no, but instead it's what they call a standing division. A standing division means they're going to say, okay, everybody that's for it right now, stand up. And you would have to literally be in the chamber, like I was, to quickly write down everyone that stood up or take a picture. And then they sit down and they say, okay, now everyone that's against it, you're going to stand. And then so you'd have to quickly find out everyone that stood in the chamber to vote against that. So it's a sneaky, secretive way so that you don't understand who's doing what.
So what this video, this is a sunshine requested video from the Missouri Senate, so we can see, they did it so we could see who voted yes and who voted no to have video in the chamber. So here we go. I can get my technology to work.
Thank you. All those in favor of tabling the motion, please, or resolution? All right. All the senators, please proceed to your desk so we can have a standing division. Senator from Jefferson?
That we're calling senators to the chamber.
All right. And Sergeant at Arms, would you please confirm the senators that have been called to the chamber? Thank you.
So what's also troubling, why are the senators not on the floor listening to the debate or they're not a part of it? That's what's horrifying to me when I go and sit with her and give her emotional support sometimes. I'm not good at that. Not good at all. I get so mad.
Says, how can you stand this?
I want to video all the lobbyists.
It's God giving me patience, that's all.
It is just so frustrating. So they're all kind of, okay, what just happened?
It did timed out. Push a button.
No.
Oh, they shut it off.
Do you see what just happened?
Okay. Senators that are present appear to be at their desk. All those in favor of tabling the motion relating to resolution number 668, would you please stand?
You understand what's happening, right?
So this was a post cut?
So you can't see it. This is the video that was produced from the leadership of the Missouri Senate, because guys, they have videos. They have videographers on the Senate floor at all times. They have videographers in the hearings. They just don't want you to see it. This is your Missouri Senate that keeps asking, as they're peddling this legislation, trust us. We're going to do what's right by you. But this is just one little example of what they don't want you to see. I just think that so they're still voting. You know I love this.
You please be seated.
It'll come back
Those
up.
opposed to tabling the motion, or motion to table the resolution relating to 668, please stand.
No. So right now they're doing, actually tabling in this instance was they wanted to move on from that. So that was the group that just stood there, and now we're the other group that says we want to table it.
So the issue is they're not going to let you see, but that it didn't pass. So we'll move on. Issue number 1, you do not need to vote to reduce or eliminate your state income tax.
So if you look at the sheets, the ones that we were able to hand out to you, look at the HJR 173 and 174, and you'll be able to follow along through the legislation with us. So you do not have to vote to reduce or eliminate your income taxes at any point. The legislature can already do that. So what this is again, ballot candy to, well, yes, I would like to reduce or eliminate my income tax. But what don't they have the authority to do right now? That is tax you on any services, that is tax you increase on goods, because we have constitutional protections that say that a vote of the people is required if they do those things. And so they're trying to trick you, a bait and switch, on do you want to reduce or eliminate your income taxes? Well, yes, I do. Well, then they don't tell you the other part, where we're going to increase taxation on these other places around constitutional protection.
This is just proof. It goes back and it says the decrease in 2022 under SB 3 and SB 5, it allowed the legislature to reduce your taxes without a vote of the people. So just know when they say run, don't walk, phase out your income tax, eliminate your state income tax, that is not being honest. Because that's what they want you to think they're doing. But in the legislation, guess what? There's no end date. We're going to go into a lot of that, so we're going to skip through some of this pretty quick. The actual legislation is this. It's HJR 173 and 174. Go up, Lisa.
Okay, so right now, what you need to understand, they're talking a lot about Tennessee, Florida, and Texas. And we want to be like them. What they're not telling you is, one, we're dead broke. Okay, let's start. We're dead broke right now because they've spent us into oblivion. But other than that, in the general revenue, 64% of our general revenue comes from the income tax. State sales and use tax are 23.5%, and the corporate income tax is 4.8%. So this is how we are basically funded by the income tax right now. Tennessee had another tax, and depending on who you talk to, I think it's called it was a hall tax when it actually was phased out, but it was 1%. It was 1%, so even if you want to say it was an income tax, or you don't want to say it was an income tax, it doesn't it was 1%.
It was on bonds and dividends, like interest payments on bonds and dividends, so it did not sweep the whole entire state. So when they continue to talk about Tennessee, the issue is, just a couple more things.
Okay, so what you need to understand, Tennessee and Texas, they have a minimum wage of $7.25. Ours is at $15. You can get 2 burgers for the price of 1 if you're in an entry-level small business in the state of Tennessee. Also, what's another driver of big business? Texas and Tennessee and Florida all have right to work. That means that with the unions, they're able, where they don't have to participate in the unions, they're able to keep their construction costs low. So whether you agree with that or not, that's not the point. The point is they have significant things that we do not have here in the state of Missouri, and energy in Texas, and tourism in Florida and Texas. But even those things aside,
if you walk away with one thing tonight, only tax increases require a vote of the people. Okay? Amendment 5 is a tax hike. That's why we're telling you should vote no. To amend the Missouri Constitution, there has to be a vote of the people. The legislature cannot do that without the consent of the governed. They have to have you vote. But they're not telling you that. Page 1, Section A, it says, Sections 4D and 26, Article 10, Constitution of Missouri are repealed, and 2 new sections adopted in lieu thereof, to be known as Sections 4D and 26, to read as follows. So what they're telling you in the legislation is if you vote yes and it passes, they're going to repeal the protections that currently exist on your behalf, and they're going to replace it. Somebody go do that.
So here on Section 26, you have the prohibition. This is what you would be getting rid of. The prohibition on new or local sales tax, use, or other similar transaction-based tax not subject to tax as of January 1st, 2015. In order to prohibit an increase in the tax burden on the citizens of Missouri, state and local sales and use taxes or any similar transaction-based tax shall not be expanded to impose taxes on any service or transaction that was not subject to sales, use, or similar transaction-based tax on January 1st, 2015. Again, this protection is what you're getting rid of if you vote yes.
Do you remember when you voted in 2016?
If that is not, we're not
It's
there
in the
yet.
pocket.
Yes.
But do you remember in 2016, there was a vote of the people to amend the Constitution to ban tax on services? It passed overwhelmingly. What they're wanting you to do with a yes vote, they're saying, vote yourself. The tax, we already did. They want to undo what you've already done. So they're going to repeal that section. And this just shows, again, the proof that that's what we voted on in Missouri. But the crux of Amendment 5, you want to go over that?
So the crux of Amendment 5, state and local sales and use tax or any similar transaction may be expanded by legislation to impose taxes on transactions involving any goods and services.
That's what the legislation says. It's not going to read that way on your ballot, okay? And Missouri Promise and Americans for Prosperity, and they're not telling you this, but this is really what the crux of this amendment is really about. Hancock Amendment. So, do you guys know what the Hancock is? Because a lot of people don't, and that's okay. I wouldn't have either, but does anybody know what the Hancock Amendment is and what it does? Okay, this is super important. So when you look at the legislation and you read it, you kind of zoom through it, there's a little thing that sticks out called, and they show it in the legislation, it's 18E. You'll see it here in the legislation. It's page 2, line 17. If we go here, we start here in 23. If such legislation is enacted within 5 years of the effective date of this amendment, it shall not be considered new annual revenue for the purposes of section 18E.
That's not the Hancock.
That is a Hancock.
Because that's all we hear all day long. That's not the Hancock. That's not the Hancock. Google it. Google it. Everybody else, Google now. Google it.
So,
Article 10, 18E of your Missouri Constitution
This is your
is part of the
Constitution.
Hancock Amendment.
this is the Constitution of Missouri. What you will see, this is the Constitution. Voter approval required for taxes or fees when exceptions, definitions, compliance procedures are in addition to the revenue limit imposed by section 18 of this article. The General Assembly in any fiscal year shall not increase taxes or fees without voter approval that in total produce new annual revenues. So let me go back, okay? That was your Constitution and what it says. But notice this part again. Even though they have 5 years to enact legislation to say whatever they want, you don't get to vote on it. They are going to expand your tax base. They're going to tax your services. And whereas right now, you know when you're supposed to vote on a bond issue for your school, or your fire district wants more money, or your library district, or your ambulance district, and you have to vote on that increase, that tax increase, that's the Hancock that protects you. What they're doing is saying, they're going to, for 5 years, they're giving themselves a laydown of the Hancock to require your vote for 5 years. And for the purpose of this, it shall not be considered new annual revenue, even though it is. So they kind of done this little loophole thing there. Does that make sense?
So why they say, I want to try to explain this to people. So when they get on social media, no, it does not the Hancock, it does not the Hancock. Well, first of all, it is a Hancock. And what they're trying to do is word salad you to death so that you don't understand what they're talking about. So for 5 years, they get to expand this legislation around the Hancock that, by the way, after that 5 years goes on into perpetuity. It doesn't go away. That is the time for them to write the legislation. Now, I know this is a tad bit confusing, but I feel like I need to because people go on social media. And what happens after the 5 years? Well, then the Hancock goes back. But guess what? They've already rewritten everything around it. And so that's why they're trying to word salad you to death, like, no, because it's just for this legislation. The Hancock is not going anywhere. It absolutely is. I mean,
for 5 years.
it is for 5 years to write it, and then for how many ever years that legislation exists around it.
So for 5 years, so when we showed you the video and they say, trust us, for 5 years, we're gonna do what's right by you, trust us.
Gas tax
For 5 years.
for 5 years. Increase on business license this year.
So we've
Increase
got,
on personal property this last year.
let's talk about page 2, number 2, line 5, for the purpose of, it always says this, reducing and eliminating the individual income tax, and reducing local tax rates, which we all want. State and local sales and use taxes may be expanded by legislation, not yet written, about 5 years, to impose taxes on transactions involving any goods, A&E, and services. Pay attention to local tax rates. So when they're talking about the power they're giving themselves, you want to go into that? Just with the local tax, with the local.
So the local tax, what's gonna happen is also they're giving themselves license that the local can go crazy. And even in their own legislation, even if you did trust them and even if they were trustworthy and actually were gonna do what they say they were gonna do, which I don't, as a person there every day, I would never trust them, but let's just live in fairy tale land for a moment. They say in this legislation that for the first 12 months, everything's on the table and nothing's off the table, meaning your income tax cannot even be reduced for that first 12 months because they have no idea how many more taxes they might be driving in. So it's a definite free-for-all for that first year.
So in traveling, and we've traveled to huge groups all over, we've talked to hundreds of people in Missouri. We asked local elected, and there may be local elected officials in this room, like aldermen, commissioners. The question has been, did any of these guys ever tell you what this is probably gonna look like? Like in my locality, we want to spend taxes on our roads. I know that sounds crazy, our roads are terrible. We want to spend money for our sheriff's department. Some people prioritize their schools and their parks, but for the state legislature to get to decide what your local looks like, we don't wanna give them that kind of power. So when you pay attention to little words like local, it's important. This is a big deal also. They keep talking about, oh, this is gonna be net neutral. I mean, net neutral. I challenge every single one of you to look in the legislation and see where it says that. Well, it says substantially equal to a certain amount. That's
Revenue minus rebates.
That's net neutral. Okay?
Refunds.
Like that, I've been saying it to me, like, you're big dummy, like, that's net neutral. Like, well, it doesn't say that, but that's where they just try to confuse you, like Harry S. Truman always said, if you can't convince them, confuse them. And that's what you're dealing with when you deal with people that are trying to get this across the line. Do you want to go into net neutral at all anymore than that? Okay. You want to be,
Well, I guess I should talk about net truth just for 1 second. I want to tell you about what I saw this last session, because when they talk about net neutral, there's money coming into the general revenue. And I talk about it like, remember how the mafia had 2 sets of books? And they cooked the books? That's really what they're setting us up for. Because what's happening, and I see it in the legislation, is that certain money is supposed to go into general revenue. And already in anticipation for this passing, what they're doing is they're siloing and they're having those as dedicated protected funds. And so when that hits like that, it's not showing as general revenue. So it's like a second set of books. So whenever they say, well, when we get this money in, then we'll drive down your income taxes. Unless they never show on the set of books that they're driving in new revenue.
right. So when they talk about general revenue, in the first version of this bill, just so you know, they kept talking about triggers. And so once you would get to a certain level, 20 million over, it would trigger, okay, a reduction in your state income tax. Well, we started really reading that and what that trigger looked like. The average Missourian pays $1,500 a year in state income tax. The trigger for the $20 million overage in the general revenue, it said nets, which we all know what that means. Whatever you want it to mean. Okay? Really? And so when you look, they kept using the term in the original piece of legislation with this session, they substituted this much more vague piece that passed, but they said a 0.01% decrease for every 20 million trigger. Do you know how much that equals to the average Missourian? You want to guess? 15 cents. 15 cents.
A cap of $15 a year.
And they capped it at $15. We're really swimming in cash. I mean, we're swimming in it. $15 a year. You can say thank you later. They cut that out because we were making such fun of them. I'm like, oh, whoa, 15 cents for 20 million, whoa. And they ended up, they brought a new version in. This is way more vague, but we know what their intent is. There was one state rep, and I gotta say this, I was watching her do this. I know you're like, I gotta tell her. But she was talking about that.
She's nice. She's a nice.
She's
nice.
That's not the point.
I know it's not the point.
She's nice. It's not the point. But she was talking about we're gonna keep it net neutral. Like we're gonna. So what happens is when if you pay in $6,000 a year in your state income tax and you hit your threshold and you need a new TV, well, it's up to you. So do you want to go to Walmart and pay your sales tax? Okay, or do you want to get it from a garage sale and stay neutral? What? What in the world? So if you want to keep it neutral, it's up to you guys, okay? The neutrality is also in your hands, because if you go buy things, well, it's your own fault. Like your taxes are going to go up, like groceries and dentist appointments and a veterinarian, and you need a dent on your house, or hospital, all of it. And we can go on and on because we love doing that, but we won't bore you with that because we get a kick out of ourselves sometimes. Schools. You're also going to hear about schools in this bill, and it's great in theory. I mean, do you want to pick this one up?
So none of the school funds can be touched. So when you hear about the school funds, that's just a lie. None of the school funds can be touched. So when they talk about driving down one of these others locally, right? That means though that there cannot be touched the public schools, and it's a one-time adjustment down. We don't know what the one-time adjustment's gonna look like. But let's just say that you're driving in all kinds of taxation, they get a one-time drive-down adjustment, but do not touch the public schools. So like Stacy said, and it's no coincidence, by the way, that a lot of these people that are for this, that are billionaires, that kind of run policy here, they want things like, I don't know, in St. Louis, they wanted a city-county merger. And you know what has been an enemy to that merger? The services. So all your emergency service, those kind of things. So again, like they're going to be looking to those things to be cut because they're saying schools are off limits.
So when you're hearing they're coming into your community and saying, hey, when we are swimming in like surplus, we're going to cut your real estate taxes. Have you heard that one? We're going to cut those property taxes for you. But here's what the legislation actually says. It says, in the manner provided by law enacted by the General Assembly, not yet written, okay. That's yet to be written. They can make a one-time, say that to yourself, one time, not every time they hit a trigger, not any time that you get a true excess surplus, but one time. And we don't know how much that rate could be. It could be 0.002%. We don't know because they haven't written the legislation yet. They get 5 years to do that. So it says you can make a one-time adjustment to one or more of the following rates of tax imposed by the political subdivision, this is local, to reduce the amount of revenue generated. And here's an amount, I love this term. This is so awesome when politicians write it. In an amount that is substantially equal to 97%. Now, substantially equal. What's that mean?
Means whatever they want it to mean, and they're also giving themselves, they're telling you right there, if nothing else, that means a 3% increase, minimum. Right there. Minimum.
Embedded in your Constitution, okay? to 97% of the additional revenue. So it goes down and it shows the things that in legislation they can enact later. One time, you get a reduction. We don't know what the rate will be because it's not been written yet.
And I gotta say, Stacy, as the governor is forcing your assessors, forcing their hand by the state tax commission to drive up your assessments, to drive them up. So when I see the governor out on social media, it drives me crazy because I'm there at the Capitol as he's telling his he appointed them, state tax commission, to drive up your assessments, which means your taxes go through the roof on your real property.
Have your real estate taxes gone up here?
Oh, yeah.
Let me tell you, I'm gonna give you a really quick summary of why. Because in the state of Missouri, the appointed state tax commission 3-member board have gone around to your elected assessors and said, you either sign this memorandum of understanding, we have copies on the Shield Maidens Substack, you can find it there. But it says either you agree to adopt this international set of standards for assessment.
Go back.
Which is AI.
Your what? Your international.
That's right, international set of standards for assessment. And if you don't do that, then we're gonna withhold your sales tax for your county. There have been some bold and brave assessors that have filed suit against the state tax commission. They should be there in an advisory capacity only. But that is called political extortion, and that's because of your governor. Make no mistake.
Yeah.
They serve at the pleasure of the governor. He could say, oh no, but you know what they're using for international standards to assess your property values?
Artificial intelligence, and that's why Jackson County and Kansas City, if you saw any of those headlines, people were being driven out of their homes because the artificial intelligence has driven up their assessments and basically just out-taxed them out of their homes.
I sit on my own board of equalization. We're about to have a hearing in 2 weeks. What is happening is disgusting. 55,000 people in Jackson County, Missouri appealed their assessed valuation because your state tax commission has a boot on the neck of every single elected assessor saying either you adopt these standards or we're not going to pay you your sales tax as a county. It's political extortion. But anyway, but the parent.
Can I interject just 1 second? That's why I'm a no on 2. If you guys want to know about the amendments, I'm a no on 2. Because it not only gives Jackson County an elected assessor, they already have one, by the way, now. It does put it in their constitution, which is great, but what they're not telling you is it mandates, and a Democrat put this in, it mandates all of these assessors to have this training. And so this training is going to be to strong arm all of these assessors. If you don't do X, Y, and Z, you're going to get sued.
Yep.
It's just like that MSBA when they do the same thing.
Go to Shield Maidens of Missouri, go to our Substack. All of this is all there. You can read all of it. We bring all the receipts. But look at this last paragraph here. Notwithstanding the provisions of subsection 1, to the contrary, no political subdivision shall adjust its local tax rates in a manner that results in any reduction in funding to any public school within or serving any political subdivision. What funds your local schools? Real estate taxes. So the contradiction when you're being told, oh no, when we're swimming in cash, you're going to get your real estate taxes lowered. Well, pretty sure this right here says different. Okay? Got some really fun videos coming up. Here's the other question. Senior tax freezes, did you guys adopt that in this area?
Yeah.
So the question becomes, with your senior tax freezes, go back to that language. Your senior tax freezes right now, that's a statute. That's statutory. What they're about to do is put that language that I just showed you in the Constitution. Will that jeopardize your senior tax freezes?
And I would say the Democrats are saying so, because Democrat back on the floor, he wanted to identify, and by the way, this is a cross-party problem.
Yeah.
In case you guys don't understand this yet, okay? It's the parties against the people, okay? They work together in unison. If you don't know this yet, we just gave you something to just blow your mind. But with that, what he said was identify all the senior tax freezes. Why is he wanting to identify all the senior tax freezes? Because they were talking about this. And you cannot, those two are not compatible. The senior tax freeze is what, like, the seniors, I'm sorry, are funding also the public schools. So they're not compatible. That's why he wants to identify them.
So your senior tax freezes, with the language as this is written, the Constitution will be changed to put this in. Very likely will override what you're enjoying by way of state statute. I'm gonna move on. Talk about this really quick.
Okay, so again, this is the siloing of the funds, and I'm just showing you where this happened. So this is a bill by Representative Okerling. He's a Republican. And what did he do? These were all the different things last session that he did. Banks. So this was about bank licensing. It went to a dedicated special fund for the regulation of banks, trusts, and other corporations. Anything in that fund remaining beyond 15% was supposed to be transferred to general revenue. Now they're making sure none of it goes to general revenue. The next one, this premium finance company's license, it all went to general revenue. Now it's removing it. What would that mean? If you take each one of these separately, they're cooking the books already in anticipation for Amendment 5 passing. If it passes, they're cooking the books so that you never get a reduction or elimination in your income tax.
The thing is, you want everything to be dumped into one big bucket called general revenue. And then based on what we have in general revenue, then other funds get funded. What they're doing is saying, oh no, this is going to a dedicated fund, it's never going to GR, ever. So we remember how we talked about net? This is how they're already cooking the books through legislation that is setting up dedicated funds that will never touch general revenue. You know, I love this part. This is my part. So we talk about carve outs. Okay, you guys know what a carve out means? Okay. Well, this just makes me mad. A carve out in legislation, guess who didn't get any kind of favors? Or they didn't say, well, you can't tax medical. Wrote that into this bill, protected medical.
Groceries.
Yeah, groceries. Or real estate, or agriculture. Like, there could have been a lot of carve-outs that would have helped us, people of Missouri. But you know, we only saw one. Do you want to guess what that is? Marijuana. Okay? Marijuana got a carve-out. And here's what it says. You want to do it now?
You did the fun
You
part.
go ahead.
You're fun. So this was 12 months from the effective date for the legislation in which the General Assembly expands the sales and use tax base pursuant to subsection 2 of the section. Each sales and use tax rate imposed directly by this Constitution, with the exception of the rate imposed under Article 14 of this Constitution, shall in the manner provided by law enacted by the General Assembly be adjusted in order to reduce the amount of tax and an amount substantially equal to the amount of tax produced by any sales and use tax base expansion.
So what does that mean?
It's carving out marijuana. It says we'll touch everything else, but not marijuana. Now this is funny because we've got a guy that's out on social media 24/7, and wouldn't you know, he lives in Florida, but wouldn't you know,
I call him Florida Carl. Every time he comes on, his name's Carl Bearden. He used to live in Missouri. But every time he comes on social media, I'm like, hey, Florida Carl.
I call him Karl Marx.
I'm like, hey, Florida Carl, who owns marijuana? What, 9? Somebody told us 9.
Somebody told us 9 dispensaries.
9 dispensaries in Missouri, and he actually says in his Facebook bio he's a lobbyist. So every time he tries to weigh in, it's like, okay, you don't count. Okay, thanks, Carl. Thanks, Florida Carl. But you sit over here. Because you have interests that are not the same as ours. You will never pay this tax because Florida Carl, you live in Florida. But you did carve out marijuana, which you have marijuana interests. But you get that one. This thing? Yeah. She's so techie. Whoa, what? So what you're going to see here, just for your reference, Article 14 is medical cannabis. It is in the Constitution. That's how it looks. Go on. This is Lisa's favorite part, so I'm going to let her talk about this.
Okay, so it also talks about after the Hancock, when you see 18E in Hancock, Going down the
Yeah, I just had a picture for.
Okay, so here it is. So if you see right here, remember the 18E of this article, and shall be exempt from the provisions of Article 4, Sections 30B, 30C, and 30D. Well, what are those?
Yeah.
Those are the side load protections for highways and transportation. So all of that money goes in there. So in so doing, for the purpose of this 5 years and rewriting everything, this could bring in toll roads without your vote. We've had toll roads twice brought to the ballot, and the people have rejected it twice. But this gives a hand into the cookie jar to be able to do that. Now, this gets really into the weeds, but the courts, what has happened and what I gave out to you guys, you know these things that I gave out to you? This was to show you something. One of these are both legislation by Republicans in 2006. His name was Bartle. Okay, you can see that at the top. He sponsored this legislation. You should really take these home and read them because they're about toll roads. What do they need to open up? They needed to open up these sections of the Constitution.
Say, oh no, that's not toll roads, that's not, no, we're not gonna do anything with toll roads. It's like, well then why is it there?
Why did you open it
Why
up?
is it there? Because the issue becomes also, is again, 18E is the Hancock, it's in the same paragraph, right? 18E is the Hancock Amendment, and the Supreme Court of Missouri, it was the Supreme Court, right? Said that
It was one of the courts, but what they said was they were going to have to go around this. Now this one is really interesting too. If you look at the summary at the end of this, it also talks about, I'm just going to read it here, that this shall not be included as part of total state revenue. Again, this is talking about tolls, nor shall revenue expenditures be considered an expense of state government for the purposes of the Hancock Amendment. So here, they were trying to say, well, we're going around the Hancock Amendment. This one, they're saying we're gonna go around all of these sections and open it up. And I'm just telling you, read the entire summary here, because you will be shocked at the tyranny in the summary of the bill by this Republican senator in 2006. You'll be shocked. It talks about putting a device on our motor vehicles if we do not pay toll roads by the courts to make our vehicles immobile. Read it yourself on the summary.
So the thing that you have to know about when you put something in, an amendment that's going to be voted on by the people, yeah, like that's not what that says. Well, it's exempting the protections of those dedicated funds that are in our Constitution. So why'd you put it there? Crickets. And the courts say that the people have to vote. Is it considered a tax, the toll? Is that
It's actually considered a fee and a service, by the way, which we're talking about opening up services and fees.
So I'm gonna just really quick, shall be exempt. 30B is the allocation of the motor vehicle fuel taxes. 30C is the authority of the Highway and Transportation Commission. And 30D is a prohibition against diverting highway user revenues. Okay, they're exempting that. You vote yes. I'm not gonna go too much. Do you wanna go into the cost of toll roads? You wanna skip that? I got some.
I just want to tell you, I want you to understand really quickly about how much toll roads cost, because these are three different bridges in the state of Florida. For one, this Card Sound Bridge, the residents can purchase an annual pass for $533 per vehicle. Think about how much money this is. That's just one bridge. This set of bridges down here, $730 for all three of these bridges. Think about that, per vehicle. Toll roads are a big, big deal.
Moneymaker, big moneymaker. Okay, I'm gonna scoot through those. We compared it to other states. Do you wanna go into this one?
Okay, so when they talk about other states and the sales tax, what they're not taking in consideration is that the sales tax is, we have some places like St. Louis City that's at 13%. We're already the highest in the country. Other places like St. Louis County, they're 99 percentile out of all counties in the United States. So we're already sitting there. So when they talk about driving up the state portion, we're gonna be, just enormously over those rates, because we're already there.
So the toll roads, you wanna tell them what yours is? She's got her bill from her trip, her recent trip for the toll roads.
Now, this is just one toll road. So we recently been out west traveling. We got tolls in California and now Colorado. So this specific one toll for one highway that we drove on, we are being charged $42.91. For one, that's one highway.
I mean, that's just, again, they act like, that is not for toll roads. Well, why is it in there? That's what everybody should be asking, then why is it in there? Just like marijuana, there could have been a gazillion things you put in there, but, okay, you get the point. I'm gonna scoot past this stuff, because there's some really great videos I wanna show at the end here. You do not need to vote to eliminate your income taxes, we got that. The legislature can do that without a vote. Yes vote, suspend the Hancock for 5 years. I'm gonna skip this. But this was a radio show that Lisa and I did. They didn't have enough cameras, so I